Hello, welcome back once again to Urban X-Files. My name is Keith, and today we're going to talk about the Bargarran witches. This was brought to my attention by one of my followers on YouTube, Jimmy Marie. So thank you so much for sharing this with me. I find it truly fascinating. The Paisley's Bargarran witches were victims of widespread hysteria in Scotland throughout the 17th century, and they were fueled by the fear of Satan and the occult. In 1967, there were 7 people who had been found guilty of witchcraft at a trial in Paisley, and they were condemned to death, as of all witches back then. It's daft because the way they found out if you were a witch, it killed you anyway. They were said to put you in some water, drown you, and if you survived, you were a witch. If you died, then you were free, you weren't a witch, but you were dead. So Christine Shaw, the 11-year-old daughter of the Bargarran Laird John Shaw, had accused several locals after she began suffering an illness with seizures and delirium, which led her family, local doctors and ministers to believe she'd been cursed. Now, the Bargarran witches are regarded as the last mass execution of witches in Western Europe, and they were victims of widespread hysteria in Scotland during the 17th century, as I said before, fueled by fear of Satan and the occult. And around 84% of the victims that were persecuted in Scotland were women, typically those who were regarded as outsiders of ill repute by neighbours in their community. And the female witches were believed to have had sex with the devil, and after which he would leave a mark on her body, usually a blemish or some type of mole or spot, and a parody of Christian baptism and a symbol of their pact with the devil. And the witch prickers, which were employed to search for the devil's mark on a body of the accused, they used to strip these poor females naked, and they would be scrutinized literally from head to toe. Yes, so they would have people who would strip these poor ladies, and they would be scrutinized from head to toe and abused, looking for marks of the devil. And they had 10 of these people which are known to have acted in Scotland. Victims were also tortured to extract confessions of satanic worship in prison, and commonly these happened through sleep deprivation, where they just would not let these people rest. They would keep them awake for days on end. There's Claire Thompson, who's a librarian from the Mitchell Library, specialised in the Scottish witch trials while she was studying at university. She highlighted the library's collection illustrating the Scottish witch trials among the items in the manuscripts written by Christine Shaw's uncle with the details of the trials. And it also includes Faxmile, Demonology, a book on witchcraft law written notoriously by the superstitious King James VI in 1597. His work was a direct rebuttal to Reginald Scott's skeptical The Discovery of Witchcraft in 1584, which he questioned the very existence of witches. The king later ordered every copy of this text to be burnt, but a rare and valuable copy survived and is also held in the Mitchell Library. And she told the Glasgow newspapers, when they'd done a story on it, that these people, the witches, relatively speaking, witchcraft isn't a thing. Some people look at it as the history of misogyn women who were being persecuted as outsiders, and it was a campaign of violence against these women. But the trial of the Bargarran witches began after Christianity reportedly saw the assailant of Catherine Campbell stealing milk from the kitchen, and in a fit of rage the servant was believed to have screamed, "The devil haul your soul through hell," 3 times a Christian before she fell ill. And after a visit to the esteemed Glasgow physician Dr. Matthew Brisbane, Christian began accusing people in the village of casting some spell on her, and this led to a local crusade of around 21 men, women and children who were thrown into prison, and they were brought before trial. 7 of them were charged with murder and tormenting people in the community and punished by sentence to death. One accused man had hanged himself in his prison cell, believed to have been strangled by the devil, while others were hanged and burned in Gallow Green in Paisley on the 10th of June. The atmosphere in the town that fated afternoon was described as like being on a market day, with a large crowd gathering from far and wide to witness this gruesome event. People back then seen hangings as entertainment and would bring their families to watch this awful treatment of humans. And Catherine is also said to obviously have protested her innocence to the very bitter end. She screaming and struggling as the rope was hung around her neck. Accused women Agnes Naismith cursed the townspeople and their descendants before she was hung. Each tragedy which befell Paisley for many years since that fateful day was blamed upon this witch's curse. And the bodies, which some reported to still be alive and moving, were then cut down and dragged onto a bonfire. One account reported that a local's walking stick was used to push the limbs back into this blaze. The owner of the stick then refused to take it back and rather struggled than have it back, knowing that it had touched the burning limbs of the witches. She said it was 400 years ago and people had different beliefs back then. You can't blame them for what they did. A lot of them had firmly believed they could do magic, kill the cows and crops, and poisoned people's foods. We now know that's a lot of nonsense. And we've got to look at their actions in these historical contexts. They believed in superstitions, and it was central to their lives. The people who were accused of witchcraft were scapegoats because someone's crop had failed. There was something wrong. Societies told them to make sense of their world the way they knew how. And they were able to deal with them with the only other way they knew how, which was punishable by death. So this originally started, again, as we've said, with the 11-year-old girl who was the daughter of the Laird of Bargarran, who'd accused these 7 or 8 people of tormenting her. As the months went on, she said she developed all sorts of the symptoms where she was flying in the air, coughing up bits of hair, coal and all sorts of different things. And eventually they did decide that it was witchcraft, that this is what it was, and they went to trial. There were as many as 30 people who'd been named in a series of events which were very similar to what happened with the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts. And historians now think that Paisley witch hunts might have been influenced or based on its American counterpart. So In the end, after the hanging, all the bodies were burnt, as we said, with this bonfire, and someone's walking stick was used to put the limbs that were still moving back onto the fire, which must have been a horrible sight. And the 4 women, 3 men who'd been sentenced to death, excluding the one who'd committed suicide, where they got the remains of their charred bodies and put their remains and their ashes were inserted into Max Welton Cross, southwest of the town centre, and it was sealed with a horseshoe. As one of the women was Agnes Naismith, when she died, she screamed out a curse to all of the town's people and their descendants. The witch's mass grave, as we said, was sealed by this horseshoe to keep it locked in, so they were unable to escape. How they'd escape, I have no idea, considering they were all burned, but the spirits essentially, I think, is what it meant. So yes, that's the story of the Paisley witches. It's such a terrible, terrible tragedy what went on in the past. Again, I want to thank everyone who watches these stories and the videos. I really do appreciate it, and thanks again to Jean Marie for coming up with this story. Hopefully I've done it some justice. And if anyone else has any stories or anything interesting that I'd be able to read out, it'd be greatly appreciated if you could send them over. I do my best to reply to everyone. Sometimes with YouTube, with the comments, they get hidden for some reason, and it's only when I go onto my computer then I go onto the ones that have not been responded to, or the ones that have been blocked in case it's spam. I see them then. So take care, and see you all in the next video. Stay safe, people. Bye bye.